welcome to the Fandom Track here at ConTinual. I'm your host, Gail Martin, and today we are talking about geeky baking. What makes it geeky? Well, when geeks bake, it's automatically geeky. Bonus points if the output of your baking is demonstratively geeky. So this is the time to talk about those Yoda cakes and those Mandalorian helmets and all those other things that, you know, made the potluck people kind of look askance at what you brought, because we're going to love it. So before we dodge into that, let's let our wonderful panelists introduce themselves, starting with Jeanne.
Hey, y'all, I'm Jeanne Adams. I write urban fantasy, paranormal romantic suspense, and space adventure with my friend Nancy Northcott.
Awesome. Rachel, Ari?
Yep.
Hi.
Just to which one? Okay, I'll go by Rachel because we have an Ari and an RE, and that would be very confusing.
That's true.
So I'll assume you meant me.
I did.
Hi, I'm Rachel, otherwise known as RE Carr, and I write urban fantasy, science fiction, horror comedy, and I actually have a work in progress that is literally a bakery for beasts. So I will have plenty. I've been recipe testing for my own bespoke geeky bakes.
Nice.
I'm prepared.
Very nice. Ari.
I'm Ari McKay, and with my writing partner, Rachel Langella, so we have more Rachels, we publish as Ari contemporary and action adventure, male romance, and as Rachel, we publish urban fantasy, paranormal, and Southern Gothic romance, and I'm a big baker.
Nice. Cisca.
I am Cisca Small. I write nothing, and I am apparently the one and only. So, I do have one short story that I put in an anthology. I have yet to write anything more, but I am big into fandom. I volunteer and staff for several conventions on the East Coast in the South, and I have had 6 years of podcasting experience between sci-fi shenanigans, blasters and blades, and a new one that will be coming up and released any day now.
Very good. And I'm Gail Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. I'm not a big baker myself. My husband and my daughter are, but I do have a possum shifter character who bakes amazing donuts. So that's kind of my geeky baking claim to fame. Otherwise, I'm just the test eater, and sometimes they let me ice things. So...
Oh, was I supposed to say what I do baking-wise?
We are going to get to it, so don't worry. There will be plenty of opportunity.
Oh, good. Do we have enough time for all the baking that is done?
If
by this
not,
panel?
we can always come back again. That's the wonderful thing about
I have a huge collection of geeky cookie cutters.
Nice.
Oh.
Well, let's start there with geeky kitchen equipment. And Jeanne, head us off.
Oh my gosh. Well, of course, you got to have a KitchenAid mixer for pure kitchen geekdom, right? But I'm with Cisca on the cookie cutters. My cookie cutter collection is legion and ranges anywhere from the aforementioned Star Wars helmets and to all of the Halloween cookie cutters, every Halloween cookie cutter possible. And
do you have D&D dice?
Do I have what?
D&D dice.
I do not have D&D. I must acquire this. I must
have
acquire
D&D
this.
dice.
That's awesome.
Nice.
And you know, I think when you get down to serious geekery, it's like, you know, do you have the specific like fine tools for little bitty things? Like, do you have your own icing bag and, you know, tips and things like that? But
that's
you
what
don't
a
have
Ziploc
to.
is for, and I will die on that hill.
Exactly. If you can't find it, which I frequently cannot, there's nothing like a good old Ziploc bag.
Oh yeah.
So you don't have to have all the accoutrement to be a geeky baker, but once you're into it, it tends to go with the territory.
Well, there's like geeky, Galton Brown style geeky, and then there's like, you know, I'm going to be geeky and make everything Star Wars all the time geeky. Yes. So like there's a spectrum and different interpretations, but yeah.
As I said, I'm not really the baker in the family. I just get to be the test eater. But I did discover, much to my family's chagrin, that if you turn the Santa cookies that our cookie cutters make upside down and do them green, they look like Tyrannosaurus Rex. So
That's so cool.
I had
Even
a whole
better.
bunch of T-Rex cookies, and they were expecting Santa. So, oh well. But yeah, over time we have acquired the not only the basics like the baking mat that lets you do the pie crusts. We got the vintage. This one was bought on like eBay or something that lets you do the cheese straws and extrude the cheese straws.
Oh yeah, the extruders.
Yeah, press. Yeah. And the little pellets that weigh down the pie crust.
Yeah.
And then
I just used rice.
yeah, that works too.
Yes. Yes.
Sugar.
But do you have
Sugar
a,
works amazing.
do you have a blackbird for your fruit pies to let the steam escape?
No, we don't. But we do have little tiny things that make like leaves that you can put on pie crust tops.
Oh, that's so much fun.
That you can put on them. I will eat the pie, but you can put them on the pie crust if you
You
want.
too.
Yes, Rachel.
Oh yeah. Well, see, I have the wonderful dichotomy of I am a complete and total science nerd who loves to bake with a Massachusetts-sized apartment kitchen. So I have to set my priorities very high. So I do have the sous vide, I have the little mini combi oven, I have the precise thermopen temperature control, and I have the digital scale that measures to the gram because that's how I roll. But cookie cutters, I don't actually have space, so I other than biscuit cutters, so I have to make little cardboard templates and cut out what I want. I use sugar or beans that I have left over to weigh down my pies. And I have probably jury-rigged or botched everything. But the one thing I have is my Kraken attacking a castle bunt pan. Because if I'm going to make a bunt cake, it might as well have tentacles. I mean,
I've seen that. I don't know how well it works. How well does it work?
I
if
want
you
one.
grease it beyond the pale and pray to every baking god, you might get most of the cake out intact. I tried a savarin in it. And oh boy, now I understand why people were crying on the Great British Bake Off. But most of the tentacles did come across, and anything else I just treated as damage from wandering adventurers and sold it that way.
Hey, that works.
That works. That works.
Cake with a
Crumbling
story.
castle. Mm-hmm.
Duck
Oh,
would
yeah.
approve.
Yeah. Ari, how about you?
Well, I got into baking in actually 2012. I mean, I had always baked, but I hadn't been doing geeky stuff. And then my daughter was getting married, and she said, "Mom, would you make my wedding cakes?" And that's that's the wedding cakes. And so she was having a BioShock themed wedding. So I had to buy.
No pressure there, though. No pressure. at
Oh,
all.
no. But I had to buy all of the Wilton pans and the things that you put, I forget exactly what they're called, but you wet them and put them around the cake pan so your cake doesn't dome. And oh my God, the strange tools, like they're like what you would use for actually doing sculpture and stuff.
Yeah, they're like the
the-
carving
the
stuff and everything
work in the
else.
fondant and everything. And so I really, really got into fondant. So
So you went head first in. I'm impressed.
Very cool. Cisca, what about you?
So I have a very intense family. So I got kind of into baking because I was the only one who did it, and if nobody else came into the kitchen, that doesn't sound at all like me, does it? I have a degree in chemistry, so I always joke that it's just like chemistry, only this time you can lick the spoon. And I would say my geekiest tool is I got really into cookie decorating at one point. And I mean, I was so far into it, I had carpal tunnel surgery and was still hand icing things with a piping bag.
Oh my gosh.
I have a high pain tolerance, apparently.
Wow.
I'm motivated. But my little boy wanted iced cookies to take to his teacher for Christmas. So cookies were done. But I actually have an airbrush machine for airbrushing I suck at it, just for the record. Just because you have it doesn't mean you're very good at it. But I get an A for passion, I think, on it. I'm giving myself that. And probably my geekiest fan thing is I actually have a Sailor Moon rolling pin that when you roll out the sugar cookie, it imprints the Sailor Moon characters.
Nice.
Okay, that's pretty righteous.
That's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
My brother gave it to me. I'm so blessed.
So what's the geekiest thing you ever baked? Jeannie?
Every year at Christmas, we do Christmas Eve. We get everybody, all the misfit toys, anybody who doesn't have someplace to go or is leaving the next day, or they've got their kids on Christmas Day, but not Christmas Eve. So every Christmas Eve, sometimes we've had as few as just us and one other person. Sometimes we've had 15 or 16. You never know. So one year I decided to make beef Wellington. I had never made beef Wellington ever. So I went to the store about 3 or 4 days before and said I wanted a top round roast, and the butcher laughed at me, just flat out laughed. He said,
a top round for a beef Wellington. Oh, okay. Well, it's okay. You've never done it before.
Right. So he said, first of all, you need this other thing, and you should have ordered that 2 weeks ago. So I went to Costco to find alternatives, and here was this beautiful piece of beef that was this big. So the first order of business when making beef Wellington, as y'all probably know, is brown all sides in the pan. I'm like, the pan would have to be this big. So we made 2 beef Wellingtons, and they ended up looking like bundled up babies. And then I cut elves out of the pastries and put elves all over, and braided things. Just, well, my husband walked in when these things were about to go into the oven, and I literally was doubled over laughing at just the whole situation, because I had no idea how they was going to turn out. I had never made it before. We had 13 people coming for dinner. And our rule of thumb about Christmas Eve is, if whatever we try, it's always an experiment. If whatever we try doesn't work, there's always Chinese. So we've only had to order Chinese twice, and we've been together for 20 plus years. So go us, right? But the beef Wellington turned out really well, but it was super geeky in the sense that it was extremely complicated, and I had never done it. And I just screwed up literally everything from the jump. And thank goodness the geeky gods were with me, because it all turned out really well, and everybody enjoyed it, including the elves on the pastry. And so, yeah, that was geekdom.
I have eaten many good beef Wellingtons. I have never attempted to actually bake one that didn't come already frozen. So
not sure I will ever do it again.
I don't mean to be that guy, the one-up guy, but I did once make my own puff pastry to make the beef. Well, actually, it was a beet Wellington because it was for a vegetarian. But yeah, I salute you for attempting it, because it's insane.
There are like 12 steps to it. It was like crazy.
Yeah, I tried one of those crown roasts with where the bones stick up. That was interesting. I mean, nobody died, but it was. I go by one of those posters in the kitchen that says, nobody has ever died from eating my cooking. So it's a win. Rachel,
it's a win.
I'm just thinking how I accidentally hospitalized someone once, but it was a coincidental. They ended up in the hospital. It just happened to be after eating my food.
If it makes you feel any better, I did that once, only it was my food, but that's because we didn't know he had an allergy.
Oh, that's so we have allergies in the house, so we're like paranoid. I would say
I didn't know he had a shellfish allergy. I made him scallops.
Oh dear.
Nice romantic welcome home from deployment dinner.
Go to the hospital, get excitement, make him feel more like he's in a stressful situation. And that,
no,
yeah.
Sorry. In case you were missing a rock, here you go. Here's some stress.
The geekiest thing I've ever made. Now, do you mean the technically most difficult, challenging, or just the nerdiest thing I've ever made?
However you want to take that.
Technically most challenging, croissants from scratch with naturally leavened, because that's what we did in the pandemic. We just did really advanced recipes. But the most geeky was fairly technical in that I did a Princess Mononoke themed Yule log. made my own chocolate sponge, made a Swiss meringue mint buttercream that swirled in it. We made our own pine cones.
Really big kitchens here in Powder Springs. I'm just saying.
We did. Yeah, we made almond and homemade truffle pine cones and made marzipan kodamas sitting on it, and it had some
Please
edible
tell me you
glitter.
took pictures. Please tell me you took
I
pictures.
do have some pictures. Yes, it was absolutely the most. I don't make pretty things in general. I make very difficult. I make very tasty things, but I don't make pretty things. And it was my rare attempt at this for Christmas because we wanted to go all out. And oh my God, you've never felt stress until you have your entire family watching you while you're trying to roll a Swiss roll. It's like being on the Bake Off, which I know I've referenced before, but everyone's watching. And luckily I had a trained artist and architect who was helping me do the construction. And we made our own little mold and used a fork and stuff to put the wood grain on the ganache and dusted it with powder snow. And we candied rosemary to make pine needles. And I don't know if luckily there were like 30 people there because I don't think I would ever do something quite so froofy, but it really did have that Miyazaki ethereal, like I wanted to get like a dry ice machine and just have mist. It would have been perfect.
Nice. Ari?
Oh, that would be this cake here. For ShmooCon 2014, and if people who aren't from the DC area might not know that ShmooCon is the big hacker con in DC, and Bruce Potter runs it, and there's a big contest every year called the Barcode Schmarcode contest, because this con is very difficult to get tickets to. So they have a contest, and for the person who presents the best presentation of their barcode, which mine is that QR code right there, which was printed on edible potato paper. And everything on here is edible except the sound chip in there's a little sound chip inside where the red button is. But the theme of the contest was movies, and you had to make it relevant to ShmooCon. So we've got all the little shmoos up there. And Bruce is famous for a saying, which you can actually look up on the internet. It's called "Bow to My Firewall." And the movie I picked was Firewall. And I have all of the little people bowing to the shmoos. And everything on the cake was edible except the sound chip. And that includes the little laptop and everything that my barcode was on. And I won the contest.
That's
So I got a free admission to 2015 ShmooCon. So, and like I said, ShmooCon is really hard to get into, but yeah, that is by far the geekiest thing I have ever made.
That's
Nice.
amazing.
It's spectacular.
Yeah, that is gorgeous. Cisca?
Oh, so I have made bubbly pies from Fern from the Dragon Lover's Guide to Fern, which Jody Lynn Nine wrote. I think probably the Boca Dulce is probably the fanciest thing I've made, like geeky in that it's a meringue cake with no gluten. It's meringue, 3 layers of meringue stacked, brushed with a chocolate layer of chocolate, and then strawberries, and then coated in whipped cream.
Oh, that sounds amazing.
Nice.
It is really good, and my son doesn't like it, so I don't make it nearly as often.
Oh no.
He's a butthead.
Well, this was
I
definitely
love him. He
not.
won't eat rice pudding. He won't eat bread pudding.
Oh,
Wait, who doesn't eat rice pudding? That's like an absolute good
My
in
husband.
this universe.
I didn't
Oh,
touch it.
And my child will not eat rice pudding.
I like rice
I-
pudding.
I
I
think
don't
somebody's
understand.
going to come yank my Hispanic card from me.
I especially like horchata flavored rice pudding made with almond milk because dairy and I don't agree.
Actually, I make my horchata with almond milk, and I love it because it adds a sweet flavor without adding so much sugar.
Mhm.
So I understand that. And his favorite food is Japanese. Somebody's really going to wonder about me.
My 2 kids both grew up. They would eat sushi. They wouldn't eat mashed potatoes and would turn down chicken nuggets for miso soup. So I understand. It's a generational kid thing.
I think
Well,
my son just likes to mock me. His 3 favorite foods come from no continent that I'm from.
the geekiest cakes I've seen, I did not make them, but at a couple of conventions that I've attended, RavenCon and the former Mysticon, one of the volunteers loved to build cakes.
Oh yeah, Carla
build
made
them,
amazing cakes.
and would make them in honor of the guest of honor. So there was one year where I think George R. Martin was the guest, and she did a cake with a dragon and the wings moved. The wings were motorized. There was another one that had a big treasure chest, like a pirate treasure chest that had all the details. And then there was a Cylon helmet. And it had the lights in the visor that went back and forth. But it also had a speaker, and it someone in another room was listening to it and could speak through it and would address people in the con suite, like, I see you took those potato chips, and
that's hysterical.
Looking around like, where? It's a Cylon. So it was always a treat with those conventions to see what she was going to come up with next, because they really were fantastic creations and they tasted good too. So, that's the real test. Does it look good, but does it taste good? So what is your geekiest baking disaster? What just goes up on top of never again, we survived? Jeannie?
Fondue.
Really?
Now, I have made it well and pulled it off completely. But one of the aforementioned Christmas Eves that we ended up ordering Chinese was, we tried fondue, and I had gotten all these recipes. And remember, this is always an experiment. There is always something that is experimental. So we had gotten these fondue recipes, and we got out the fondue pots and the forks and the bread and the meat and the whole deal. Oh, it was a disaster. It was awful. I don't know whether the meat was just like right at good, but it tasted terrible when it was cooked. And we did the beer cheese thing, and it just kept congealing. We were like, yeah, it's time for Chinese food.
I've had problems making beer cheese. Sometimes you just end up with, it's like the gods do not want you to have this.
It's some atmospheric thing, or the planets are in the wrong alignment or something. I have no idea, because it had worked previous times. So, but that one, and I tried to make, one year at the holidays, I tried to make Hamantaschen. Again, kind of one of those recipes you find in Bon Appetit and you go, what can it be? And according to friends of mine, Hamantaschen isn't that hard. And I'm like, really? Because didn't work out so well. There were these little triangles that were like, I could have built buildings with them. They were, yeah.
I don't know what it is.
What's it supposed to be?
It's supposed to be it's a type of like sweet cookie that has poppy seeds in it.
Oh,
and,
okay.
And I think you can put like fruit fillings in them too, but they're not like super soft like rugula or like a filled bread would be, but they're more like a little bit more like a shortbread. And they have the poppy seeds, the most common filling, but then sometimes they have fruit and stuff like that. So they're usually really tasty and shortbready and scony and all that, but not this time.
Okay. Rachel.
Oh, it's got to be the Adventures in Vegan Cheesecake. Oh, yeah. Now, keep in mind, now non-dairy milk in the past like 5 years has grown leaps and bounds, exponentially much better, and you can get some decent ice creams. Non-dairy cheese is still lagging. There is one exception, and there's Kite Hill brand cream cheese now, which is great, but this did not exist those years ago. And my friend, I'm lactose intolerant, my friend is allergic to dairy, and she really wanted a cheesecake, so I set upon myself to make it. I could have bought a vegan cheesecake, but it was like $25. I'm like, that's the most ridiculous. The ingredients to make one tiny vegan cheesecake were well over 30. It like took all these different nuts and dates, and it had a gluten-free crust that was gluten-free and vegan, and by the end of it, when it finally baked, texturally it was something that I'm pretty sure was at home on a different planet than our own. It was at once both spongy and leaky and hard and runny, all in a single disc that was a color. The color could only be described as 1990s office furniture.
Ooh.
Which is not an appealing thing to put in your mouth. And then you finally try to eat it and it's gritty. How did it become this? All these other textures and it's gritty. And it tasted like almost rancid peanut butter.
Ooh.
There was literally nothing redeeming about this, except they said try it frozen with raspberries. And I'm like, at this point, I won't say exactly what it was because it would be impolite for a PG-13 audience, but I did indeed freeze it and serve it with raspberries. And the person who ate it said it was interesting, which is code for we all know. But by God, they're much easier to make now with vegan cream cheese options. It is a rare case where the super processed commercial product is incredibly worth it. And I then learned also you could make cheesecakes with tofu and they are friggin' divine. And I was very embarrassed because I could have made a much better thing for about $10. But you live and learn. So never make the quote unquote on the internet easy vegan gluten-free cheesecake from scratch.
This is true. Ari?
Oh, that would be this cake here. That's actually supposed to be a 3-level cake my daughter and I were making for a party. And the first layer came out. We were having to bake it because I didn't have a double oven at that point. I just had a single oven. And the first layer, the lower level, came out beautiful. And then the other two, it was lemon cake. And we were trying to do like Meyer lemon, which has got a whole different kind of chemical reaction to like regular lemon juice for some reason. I don't know if it's more acidic or
it's
what.
Less acidic.
Less acidic and more sugary.
So, but whatever it was, since we used Meyer lemon instead of regular lemon on these other two layers, they just kind of, I don't know, they came out as this like amorphous mass. It was like really, really bad. And we're like, we don't have time to bake more. And we'd already rolled out the fondant. And so it's like, we just put it together. So it was all the decorations we had been working on the fondant for days, right? My daughter made this mermaid up here, and we have it's always backwards in the thing. We had a little pirate chest, and we had all these jellyfish and the great big octopus on the top. And we had spent days working on these fondant creations because, of course, the cake's the easy part, right? It's the fondant that takes all the work. And except for when 2 layers of your cake kind of just collapse and die. So it's like, okay, it's ocean themed. We're just going to go ahead and make it look like this undersea mount. And then we just kind of put the fondant on it, decorated it. And then it's like, nobody eat those top 2 tiers. We're just going to cut them off. And then we got the bottom tier of the cake. Fortunately, this wasn't something we were getting paid for. This was when we were still kind of learning. That was in the run up to making the wedding cakes. This was one of the cakes that we had made for a party, and it just, no, never again will I use Meyer lemon juice in a cake.
It's my favorite citrus to work with. So if you ever need a tip, just let me know.
It just doesn't work as like a substitution if you're making a lemon cake with regular lemon juice. The recipe apparently is, we figure, hey, lemon juice is lemon juice, right?
No, you have to add a little drop of vinegar or two to up the acidity.
Yeah, it really made a mess.
Sorry.
Cisca, how about you?
I am very blessed in that probably the absolute worst things that I've ever seen baked were not things I made. That sounds very egotistical. I did have a cake that I made that was an almond tort. And it did not turn out very well. The top looked very we'll say massacred. And there is this beautiful cookbook that I love called Anne Voulon Make It Right. and she's a cooking recipe, and she actually has pictures in this, and this is where I got the recipe. Cooked, like overcooked, undercooked, and just right, and then she tells you how to fix them.
Nice.
Yeah, I did it. Everything looked perfect in like the just right picture. When I pulled it out of the oven, it was not by the time it cooled. I'm just saying. And I will admit some of it was I may not have understood how to properly use a springform pan because it was my first time using one. But I just covered that thing in whipped cream and it was all good. Everybody at the party ate it and liked it. So I did a Bavarian eggnog flavored cream pie. My now ex-husband wouldn't eat it, but everybody else loved it. And one guy proposed to me, and he goes, "I'm married," and he goes, "I don't care. If you're watching this, call me because you were hot." But that was after 10 years. But I would say I have a friend who every year he gave us these Eastern European homemade cookies that were made with anise, like heavily anised, and they were rock hard. Like I've had biscotti that was more moist. And we just kind of politely smiled. And then I had one friend who tried to do a sugar-free, sorry, I don't know. She was trying to do a key lime pie that was like low sugar, no gluten, no fill, and used avocados and limes. And I told her that was an abomination to nature and I would not touch it. I've known her since we were in high school. I'm not normally that blunt with people when they hand me abominations. I will at least pretend. Not with that.
I discovered to my great horror that using Splenda with citrus doesn't work out very well.
I tried to make an angel food cake with like a sugar-free alternative.
That's difficult.
It was very difficult.
My husband always made this really good peppermint cake for Christmas. It was a Southern Living recipe. It's like 4 layers and it's got homemade buttercream icing tinted with peppermint. And it's like a red velvet cake on the inside.
Nice.
And then you use the little peppermint candy, the mint type candies crushed up as decoration on the top. And it's all very festive and very Christmassy and very pretty. Well, the first year that our daughter went to her new in-laws for Christmas instead of at ours, she wanted to recreate this Christmas tradition. And she couldn't find, Jeannie's heard this story before, she couldn't find the peppermint flavoring. So she thought, well, it's mint. And she bought spearmint, which has gone down in family history as the toothpaste cake. Because peppermint and buttercream, yes. Spearmint icing, no. So yeah, that is a substitution that didn't work. And I will not attempt to tell the story, but if you see the holiday disasters panel that we did last year, Jean Marie Ward recounts a truly epic incident with her mother that involved a turkey and an autoclave. And that's all I'm going to say. So
it's worth the price of admission if you see that episode repeated. Just you will howl.
Yeah, if you see that repeated, you got to watch it because really,
worth
there's
the
only
price of
one
admission.
Yeah, it is. So we all got through pandemic, I'm sure, watching the Great British Baking Show. Or you know, perusing those magazines like Bon Appetit or Southern Living. What is your aspirational baking goal? Is there something out there that has this shining light behind it that you think, if I could just bake that, it would be the pinnacle, that you haven't tried yet, maybe? Jeannie?
Oh gosh, there are a couple things that are unachievable. I would like to make. My mother used to make this cake that was we used to just call it cloud cake. There is no recipe for it. It does not exist. I have scoured the internet for anything even vaguely like it. It's not like angel food cake, but it's not like a meringue. And because I was not interested enough in baking before she passed. I didn't know. My sister was, but she didn't really like that cake, so she didn't care. And so it's one of those lost to the ages. And my aunties who did live longer than my mom, neither one of them ever made it. She got it out of some magazine at some point. So that's one that's sort of out there and will never be replicated. I would really like to make a top-notch German chocolate cake. It is my absolute favorite. I adore German chocolate cake, but it's a hard recipe to find a really good one that isn't either too dry or too gooey. And a dear friend of mine makes it, and she made it one year for my birthday, but she has a family tradition that recipe stays in the family. So can't get it from her. So if any of you guys have a really good German chocolate cake recipe, that's probably the only besides cloud cake that I have.
Okay. Rachel.
Well, I kind of run the Mortal Kombat like tower of recipes. So I've made it to the naturally leavened homemade from scratch croissants. I mean, I got the European butter. I did it. I leavened. They take 3 days. I have done that one. So I am up now to panettone is my next level. The main problem with panettone is ingredient wise, it's very expensive just with if you want to do it well with all the dried fruits and candied peels. And the first time I'm doing it on my Tower of Baking Hell recipe thing is I do the hardest version I possibly can. So I will candy my own peel. I will roast my own chestnuts, all of that. So I am up to panettone, and I think I'm going to be trying it this Christmas.
Yay!
I got to get
You have to tell us how it goes.
Well, the hardest part for me is, as I said, I'm doing all of this in a kitchen that has no countertops. I have no dishwasher. I have one oven. And thus,
you can come to the South. We know how to make kitchens down here.
I will say I had to do the Yule log in Memphis at my family's house because it's the only place that had counters. But the hardest part is going to be it has to cool upside down. And I have 3 cats, and 2 of them are cake fiends. So finding a place where I can successfully cool a panettone and not have it attacked by my crazy 2-girl cats is my real challenge. But if anyone needs like a hard recipe, I've done the puff pastry, I've done the cinnamon rolls from scratch, I have done various cakes, including red velvet, hummingbird. I haven't done German chocolate because I don't generally like coconut, but I might try it just for you, Jeannie.
Yay! I have a really big kitchen.
Next time I'm down in the con.
And I'm not far from.
Okay.
Ari.
Well, mine is less about like a particular thing as like flavor or something of it. When I was in high school, I worked at a country club as a waitress, and so I have been to more weddings than you can imagine. And there was this cake that the bride's mother at a certain wedding made that was the most beautiful wedding cake I think I have ever seen in my life. And I have seen a lot, but it was like 4 tiers in the center and then 3 tiers along each side. And it had blown glass staircases that went between the layers, and it had a champagne fountain in the middle. And it's just, I really want to make something like that. I want to make something that just would, is like jaw-droppingly beautiful. And of course, I have absolutely no reason to make anything like that ever, right? I mean, my daughter wanted the simple, 1-layer cakes for her wedding. But, someday I'm hoping that I have a reason to actually do something that elaborate. And that would just be like, then I would just stand back and look at it and not want anybody to ever eat it, right? So I would just be like, I just want to look at how beautiful it is. But yes, that's my aspiration.
Okay. Cisca.
Okay, well, while everybody was talking, I remembered the one cake I was ordered never to make again. Can I tell that story, or should we leave it for another?
Absolutely.
During the pandemic, I didn't do a lot of baking, but when I was in the Army and all my friends were deployed and I was left behind because of medical reasons, I did a lot of stress cooking then, and it's particularly baking. and I made a Jack Daniels cake. And I would tend to make the cake, make whatever it was, and then take it into work. I did not get all of the whiskey that was used as flavoring cooked off, apparently, and one of the lieutenants got a little drunk at work.
A little embarrassing.
Yeah. I looked at them and I'm like, they even examined the recipe and they're like, this should have cooked everything up. And I'm like, I really didn't follow the recipe. And you guys thought I was just a miscreant in fandom.
Do you have an aspirational cake?
I do. I want to make a croquembouche one day.
A what?
Ooh.
A croquembouche.
My daughter's
It's like-
made one.
It's like a tower of puff pastries, and then you have sugar lace on it.
Ooh.
And
Really gorgeous. They're
I
really
really hate
gorgeous.
myself, but I want one. I want to make one. I don't just want one. I want to make one and eat it. And I
It's-
might even share it with people.
Yeah, it's definitely one that if you don't have a time constraint, it's not as horrible. What makes it really hard is if you're in a cooking show and you have the restraint, because if you can have the hours to cool your creme pat, if you have time to check all your shoe buns and make sure they work, and the only hard part is the caramel and the construction. They're actually pretty simple otherwise. So I
say
believe
this,
in
but
you.
I am way too ADHD for this not to be a challenge, even without a timer.
Oh, I am a raging ADHD baker as well. So I see you. I see you.
All right, folks, we have blown through our time and I'm hungry now. So thank you guys so much for such a wonderful, wonderful conversation on geeky baking. But before we go, I'd like to have everybody say where we can find you online. And if you have a new, recent, or upcoming book or project, let us know. Jeannie?
Okay, you can find me online at jeanneadams.com. You can find me on most social media, including Instagram, the thing formerly known as Twitter, and still for just a little while longer, probably. Just the usual places. You can find me here on ConTinual a whole lot. And I have an upcoming release in November. I have a novella in the anthology, the Mercedes Lackey anthology that's coming out in November.
Awesome. I am still looking forward to that anthology.
Yay!
It's on my birthday list.
Ooh,
Yeah.
nice.
I was super stoked to be invited. It was great.
Rachel?
Yeah, you can find me at my website, racheleccarr.com. Very important because the original Rachel Carr writes vegan cookbooks, and that's not me. Or you can find me on all the social medias at Total Recar. Yep, that is Total Recar. And if you get my handle, you get my books. My latest release, The Final Girl, Part 1, is available now on Amazon.
Very good. Ari?
I
can be found at arimckay.com and also on Facebook as Ari McKay, and I am on there way too much. But I have 2 releases coming out this month. One as Ari McKay, which is part of the Road to Rocktoberfest series with T.L. Travis and some of the other MM authors. And that's called Key Change, and that will be out on October 10th. And then I have as Rachel Langella the ultimate book in the Carnival of Mysteries series, which Morgan Bryce was part of the Carnival of Mysteries, and that will be coming out on the 25th, and it's called Gods and Monsters.
Nice. Cisca? Oops, we just lost her.
Oh, I'm back. I'm back. Sorry.
Okay.
I'm doing this from my phone in a parking lot because my life is so busy.
Okay. How about you?
So I am found on Facebook and TikTok as Cisca Small, or I think Doc Cisca on TikTok, and then Fantasy Page Stage on Instagram, because I am half of the creative team of Page to Stage, the costume contest. And as for projects I have coming up, hopefully this is airing in November, right?
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully my new podcast, Altered Scopes, will be up, where I am doing it with the amazing Mira Rose.
Very nice.
So, yeah. And hopefully I'll have time so that I can come do more stuff with Continual.
Yay!
That's
And
the
I'm
goal.
pretty,
That's my goal for this year.
yay! And I'm pretty easy to find at gailcmartin.com, morganbryce.com, on all the social medias under one or both of those names. So if you spell them right, you'll find me. And new release wise, Spark of Destiny is coming out. That's the next book in the Jake Desmond series. The 7th Witchbane book is coming out. And I'm working on a bunch of fun stuff for special holiday projects. But most of the time you can find me here on ConTinual. So thank you all.
You just had Roustabout came out too, right?
Yes, I did, which was in the Carnival of Mysteries. Yes.
Awesome book. Awesome.
Very exciting. That series is just fantastic. Go find it. So anyhow, thank you all for being wonderful, wonderful panelists. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more fandom stuff coming up soon on ConTinual. So we'll see you online.